United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence are based primarily on the Bible.
In my coverage of Christian nationalism, one of the biggest and loudest and most devastating voices in the conversation is former General Mike Flynn, who is also the former national security advisor for Donald Trump. He's also a pardoned criminal. I want to play for you a clip of Michael Flynn in a church where he's speaking to congregants and the pastors at this special event. And he's letting them know that every now and then they need to put down the Bible and teach the Constitution. Let me let you hear the clip, and then let's discuss why this particular message is so dangerous.
Our Constitution, if you read our Constitution, and you should, in fact, you should put the Bible aside and read the Constitution during some of your sermons. Just read pieces of it. Why? Because if you study our Constitution, I mean study it. You study the Federalist Papers. You study the writings of our founders. Writings as deep as reading the letters from our founding fathers to their wives or to their children. They're fascinating. And the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence are based primarily on the Bible. They are. They are. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, there's plenty of doubt about it because the founders themselves said that they weren't basing this on the Bible, but I digress. Here's what's clearly the problem here. This is hardening the resolve of these white evangelical churches to lean into their Christian nationalism and their theocratic fascism. That's all this is. This is just another way to give these white evangelical pastors permission to ignore any of the teachings in the Bible that contradict directly Christian nationalism, right? Essentially just ignore all of Jesus's teachings, because you can't read Jesus's teachings and think that Christian nationalism is a good thing. But here's the second thing that's really critical in what Michael Flynn said. He is forwarding this argument that was also forwarded by the Oklahoma State school superintendent or superintendent of schools, where he was arguing that because from their interpretation of the history of this country, because those documents were written and inspired by the Bible, therefore we should be willing to teach the Bible in public schools. We had an episode on that about 3 weeks ago. The Oklahoma State school superintendent is trying to get the Bible to be taught in schools as a historical document because of what Michael Flynn just said at the end of his clip, which was, well, these documents, these founding documents in our country were founded and based rather on the Bible.
The United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence are based primarily on the Bible. They are. There's no doubt about it.
So that's why Michael Flynn thinks that you can put the Bible aside for a second and just read the Constitution in church. And then at the schools, like in Oklahoma, they want you to put down the history books and read the Bible instead. Do you see how they're working both sides of the aisle on this? They're sincerely leaning into their theocratic fascism. They want not even Christ-centered. It is not. There's nothing Christ-centered about what they believe, but they'll say Christ-centered. But at the end of the day, they want a society they can dominate with their own interpretation, even if it contradicts with what Christ said. You want an example? Well, yesterday's show, we talked about very briefly the Raw Story article, rawstory.com, where a pastor was alarmed after Trump-loving congregants derided Jesus's teachings as weak. And here's a passage from the article. It was, quote, "It was the result of having multiple pastors tell me, essentially, the same story about quoting the Sermon on the Mount, parenthetically in their preaching, quote unquote, turn the other cheek, and to have someone come up after and say, where did you get those liberal talking points?" And what was alarming to me this is still a quote, what was alarming to me is that in most of these scenarios, when the pastor would say, I'm literally quoting Jesus Christ, the response would not be, oh, I apologize. The response would be, yes, but that doesn't work anymore. That's weak. So these Christian nationalists are not Christ-centered at all. They are willing to turn on Jesus himself because they don't need a gospel or a religion that is peaceful. They don't need one that is loving. They don't need a religion that they could possibly have a coexistence with other people. No, they need a religion that they can wield as a weapon, as a bludgeoning tool, so that they can obtain and maintain power, political and economic and societal power by any means necessary. And so when you hear them talking about preaching the Constitution in the church and teaching the Bible in schools, understand that what they're talking about is a very specific interpretation that is aimed at causing the maximum harm.